Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us remotely is Gabe Maser. He's the Vice President of Government Relations at the International Code Council, or ICC. We're going to look at a group of essential workers that are crucial to the long-term success of our economy. Gabe, it's great to have you on with us. And it isn't a group that we typically hear in the news, right? Usually it's healthcare workers, service workers, frontline workers. But this is actually building code officials and inspectors. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as the Department of Homeland Security has viewed construction activities in the construction industry as being sort of essential to our response to the pandemic, so has DHS viewed the regulating industry for that construction industry as also critical. So code inspectors, plan reviewers, plans examiners are the officials who ensure that construction and remodeling that's undertaken is done safely to protect both the construction workers and the future occupants of those buildings. Future inspections where significant risks arise to the health and safety of the occupants, and that pertains to maybe electrical safety or sanitary hazards, structural safety, things like that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like when we come out on the other side of COVID-19, because of course, code officials ensure that healthcare infrastructure, including temporary structures and occupancies, are built safe and live up to those measures that are put in place. How has it changed for building code professionals, and what do you think it's going to look like going forward for them?
Well, so you touch on a good point. It sort of speaks to why these officials are so important to the response. So they are overseeing, ensuring that temporary structures or changes in occupancy are done safely to support medical surge capacity. They're ensuring that the ventilation systems in hospitals are properly maintained so that those are functioning. How it's changing, and this sort of speaks to a survey that we conducted sort of towards the end of March into early April on sort of how different building and fire safety departments across the country are coping. And what that survey found is that although there are many departments that have sort of adapted or were able to adapt quickly, a number of departments are lacking the capability to facilitate a number of the functions that are critical remotely. And so that's not something that sort of is going to change immediately as we because it seems like the economy is not going to get switched on right away. It's going to be gradual, and that's something that we feel strongly does need to be addressed, so that while we are sort of in the pandemic and needing to respond and have these officials be part of that response, and that in the recovery and in the future, those capabilities are addressed for so many different departments that have unfortunately been under-resourced.
And what's going to happen with that? I mean, are they underfunded? Are there any expectations to get support with that? I would imagine funding is absolutely critical for the types of resources that you need.
It absolutely is, and I think some of the things that we are doing as an industry is, first we're working really closely with the construction trades, the construction industry more broadly, because just as we've seen significant needs on sort of the virtual side and the challenges that creates in the way of, I guess, additional health and safety risks for both, the code officials, the contractors they're working with, and the public more broadly. But it's also leading to permitting delays or slowdowns in work. And so the construction industry is super passionate about addressing these things. So we're working right now at the state and the local level to encourage states and local governments to use some of the resources that the federal government has provided to respond to the pandemic, to look at addressing these capability needs for departments, because that will allow sort of response in the near term, but also speed recovery in the longer term. We're also working with Congress and the administration to see if there are ways to see some resources maybe directed more explicitly towards these needs in the future.
All right, Gabe, thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.